Good evening, everyone. Uh, my name is Rick DeGolia. I am the mayor of the town of Atherton, and I have been and continue to be a member of the San Mateo County Library JPA Governing Board. I've been on the board for 7 years, and I'm extremely pleased to be here tonight to introduce Obi Kaufman, Bay Area native, avid conservationist, and author of the California Field Guide, Field Atlas, and most recently, The Forests of California. Kaufman wrote and illustrated both of these beautiful books. And rather than my just trying to describe him, I'm going to read a very brief quote that I think defines who this man is from the introduction to his California Field Atlas. And this is the quote. Although I understand California's puzzle, like personality, as well as I have understood anything, I still feel like a novice, an infatuated child, a lost and humble beggar, asking for its natural wisdom. I want to hold the whole of California in my hand, like a diamond or a spinning top. I want to coax this single piece of the universe into opening up its secrets. And I think that's exactly who Obi is. He works hard to coax what he touches to open up its secrets. And he has done a beautiful job of both writing and illustrating in these two books. And I encourage you to check them out. And rather than listening to me, I'd like to introduce Obi and have you listen to him. Obi Kaufman.
Hello, hello, Rick. Hi, can you hear me?
I can. Nice to see you.
Very good. Hey, nice to see you too. Thank you for that warm introduction and getting through that perhaps unwieldy sentence with such flair and style.
Not at all unwieldy.
Okay,
actually lovely.
All right, very good. I do strive for that. I do strive for the economy and language. I am so pleased to be here tonight to walk you and your community through some of my process, how I write these books, and to ultimately come together with some sort of idea of, gosh, just real plainly what it is I think that I'm doing. I am feeling very much like 2020 has been an exhausting effort. I am, with the ravages of the ongoing pandemic. Tonight, I would like to take this opportunity to, with you, unplug, if you will, from the challenges of the daily news cycle with its incredibly divisive reports day in and day out. And I would like to ask you to invite you to come with me on this connective journey into really what is consilient theory, bringing together the world of the humanities and the world of the sciences to better understand California, both as a metaphor for looking at nature in general, but also as a symbol of home and stewardship that we must better engage in. Use these tools at our collective disposal to find out what divine really, as we can, what the latter half of the 21st century will look like, and even what would good conservation policy look like going into the 22nd century, which is a conversation that I posit we need to be having right now. And I've got some pretty pretty concrete ideas on that. So I am very pleased to be here with the San Mateo County Libraries tonight. Thank you, Mayor Rick, for that great introduction. Thank you to Raquel and Debbie and Gary and the other folks at San Mateo County Libraries for your excellent attention and perseverance in making tonight's event happen. And I'm very pleased to introduce you all to my work. So yeah, as Rick was saying, I am an author now of, there have been 3 books and there's 3 more coming. My heart is in painting though. And so now I'm going to be sharing a few dozen slides here of different compositions that I have been working on over the past few years, some of which are in the books and some of which are not. That I'll get to the kind of program that I have here for you tonight. You know, this line that I draw between the data-driven art and the poetics of the theme. It's all very emotional. It's all very personal to me. I started the California Field Atlas with a sentence that this is a love story. My 3rd book, The Forests of California, that came out in September now, and I'm happy to report is still on the bestseller list for the San Francisco Chronicle. And whatever modicum of success that I have collected with this book, I want to, reflect it all right back onto this electric community that if you are watching me here tonight, then you are absolutely a member of this community that wants this nature first kind of story, that finally is asking the question, when do I get to be from here? When do we stop? When are we going to finally recognize the flailing attitude that we've had towards stewardship of this state over the past 170 years since that guy found that pretty rock in that river by our state's capital city? The gold rush I'm referring to now, 170 years on, 171 years on. We have taken California to be a thing from which we can just extract and consume in a very linear manner, building an economy, the 5th largest economy in the world at $3 trillion a year GDP. We have milked it for all its worth. And I use that word worth very intentionally because we are going to be talking tonight a lot about the philosophical idea of what value is, what is worth what. How can we now at this very telling moment when we are inside of a bottleneck, really, and we ask ourselves with a collective and desperate cry, is it too late? No. No, I'm just going to answer my own question right then. Whatever we have on our plates, whatever is happening, whatever comes next, the answer forward must be of love and hope, and their inextricable relationship is a primary theme in tonight's talk. The first line to my 3rd book then was that this is a family album. So just as human love and relationship evolves and matures from the romance towards the maturation and evolution of the family system, so too with the bigger understanding of this metaphor, this symbol of looking at nature in general. California's natural world is then developed in my own heart. And so I am not here to be a preacher about what it is we should be doing. I have a very specific tone to my expertise, and that is always inward facing, that this is a mystery for me to solve. Let's go on to the next slide here, as I'm talking about myself. There we go. Okay, so I don't make textbooks. These are not works of science because of that, if you will. I have a very sensitive idea of what science is. And I'm very, well, I guess I should say that I'm very sensitive to what science is. That this is a work that describes a particular character of California. And that character of California needed a whole new genre to describe it. And I invented this thing called the Field Atlas, not to describe the what of things or even the historical why of things, right? A book that describes the what of things would be a field guide, right? I'm not even really interested in telling you about the where of things, which is kind of funny for something calling itself an atlas, but I'm fine with it because what I'm ultimately doing is discussing the geography of how things work, how these big living systems, these networks of ecological, spatial, topographic functioning all support the biodiversity, the elite world class of biodiversity that we have here in the California floristic province, as the plant nerds call it. California is such a robust, rich, natural, deep, beautiful piece of the earth that I could certainly make 100 maps a day for the rest of my life and never tell the whole story that I wanted to tell. And that story that I want to tell, of course, is what aspects of California have always been here, at least since the middle Miocene, when California began to resemble its current tectonic configuration, strangely enough, about the same time scale back in the history of the Earth, when a little underrated primate was figuring out its own bipedal movement across the eastern savanna of Africa. California and the history of the genus Homo are roughly the same age, 3 to 4 to 5 million years old, when here on the West Coast, the conveyor belt like action of the San Andreas Fault was getting underway, and the California current that delivers the cold water, oxygen-rich water down from Alaska began to develop, and with it brought a regularized Mediterranean climate to the western slope of the Sierra Nevada mountains, and began the process of inventing modern California that has gone on since then to become what it is today, not without interruptions. So that character of California that has always been here, that character of California that continues to be here, despite this fantastically imposed urban veneer, this concrete jacket that we have erected so quickly, so monstrously across California. And what character of California will ultimately remain long after that veneer, that urban landscape, all of this stuff has returned to the dust from which it is made. I think of, for example, you'll find, in the middle of this slide here, we have a portrait of the Yuba River from my first book, The California Field Atlas. And you'll notice that there aren't any roads in my book. This isn't a road atlas. I'm not going to, that's getting back to like telling you or not being interested really in where things are. Or I don't tell you how to get places. If you want a road atlas, go get a road atlas, right? I'm much more interested in that blue line, because that blue line of the Yuba River, that line is older than even the San Andreas Fault. I mean, that blue line is 10 million years old. When you take your boots off and you get into the South Fork of the Yuba River and you feel that cold, clear water, that is the same water that has been flowing there for 10 million years. And then you can look at the right-hand part of that slide there, and you see what California will look like 10 million years from now, when the still active San Andreas Fault brings the peninsula of Baja, California, to become then the island of California off. It becomes the westerly neighbor of the archipelago of San Francisco. That time frame is a time frame of great hope and joy, I'm going to say here, for us humans, that you hear so much rhetoric, especially in the quote unquote environmental world, that in fact we are saving the planet right now, or at least that's what we think we are out to do. And I am here to tell you that no, or just remind you, I'm not here to tell you anything. I'm here to remind us in all of our worried fervor that in fact 10 million years from now, look at this map, 10 million years from now, after the reverberations of what has been regularly called the sixth mass extinction are beginning to shake out and fall apart, when already the world is on to devising or even inventing what maybe a seventh mass extinction might look like 50 million years after this, right? So what, given the way of island biogeography, given the way of how speciation happens on an island, can you imagine the diversity on that island in 10 million years from now? Will placental mammals even still rule the day? I don't know. In fact, probably not. But what will be there are species that have yet to be invented. And thus is the nature of the planet. The planet, nature doesn't end. It's not the way the world works. This is where I grew up, just across from you there in San Mateo. I grew up in the East Bay. This is my home, Mount Diablo. This is my Axis Mundi. This is the place every day. As a young kid, I would spend climbing waterfalls and playing with tarantulas, mapping the oak trees, naming them all regularly. They're still my good friends, so I go up to visit my more than human friends, my more than human family. It was there that I cut my teeth as a young naturalist. My father was Dr. William Kaufman III. He was the director of the Griffith Observatory down there in LA when I was a very young child. We moved to Danville when I was about 5. And, through high school, Dr. Kaufman's son was going to be a mathematician. And I engaged reality with that language. I developed a sense of what science is, but notably its shortcomings, in the sense, shortcomings isn't the right word, because I do believe that science is a basket big enough to hold all philosophy. I think ultimately what we want to do as philosophers is that our philosophies move towards science ultimately. There are so many questions that need to be, there's so many questions for which experiments haven't even been invented yet. Of course there is. My father, the astrophysicist, would talk about dark matter, how it seems that over 70%, perhaps upwards of 70% of the stuff of the universe is undetectable to us. Why is it that galaxies, for example, move as they do? We just simply have no idea, because the numbers don't add up, the math doesn't work out. And in fact, what we're seeing here ecologically is that there is in fact biological dark matter, and this is cutting edge ecological science. And this is why it is so exciting to be part of, to be a student of ecology right now, as we are learning things that we didn't understand. For example, okay, so biological dark matter, 30% of all the topsoil on the planet is fungal in nature. When you pick up a handful of soil in the forest, there are more microorganisms in that soil than there are people on the planet. In that one handful of soil. If you were to get like some sort of, I don't know, so you invent some sort of like baking rolling pin or something, and you were to roll out all of that fungal matter from inside that one handful of earth, it would cover several. It just lay all the hyphae, all the fungal, all the plant scientists call, or fungal scientists, mycologists call it mycorrhiza, right? This, if you were to lay out the mycorrhizal mat, it would cover several football fields just from that one, lay it flat end to end. If you were to do that with all the 10 inches of topsoil from around the whole biosphere of the planet, it would cover half of the known universe. That's how much life is in the soil. And this life, they talk about fungals lichenize. They have this plant biont and this fungal biont, and that's what a lichen is, right? You see the Spanish moss hanging off the trees, but lichenizing is it transcends classification of species. It challenges our very notion of taxonomic biology. And that's thrilling, because that then, I mean, we're talking about a huge quantity of life. This is how forests live. This is how forests thrive. And we don't understand how it works. And those limits of our knowledge, of our the scientific frontier, are just now coming to light. And in fact, my job, which I really delight in, is analyzing and thinking about the ethics and perhaps even the aesthetics of that kind of engagement with this new scientific way of thinking. Okay, but let's pull it back. Let's pull it back to the real world for a second. The real world being, I don't know what the real world is anymore. I've been writing this book for so long. I'm working on my 4th book now. We didn't even talk about my 2nd book yet. I don't know. I wish I was in front of you like at a live audience or something, because I wonder how many of you have seen this book. This was my 2nd book. This is called The State of Water: Understanding California's Most Precious Resource. And that came out in 2019. And I knew that I had to figure out water before I wrote my forests book. Okay, so I did the California Field Atlas, then I wrote the State of Water, and then I wrote the Forests of California. I had to figure out water before I went back to the forest, quite literally. What we have done with water, how we have altered the waterscape of California, being the most altered aspect of our natural landscape, arguably, is an effort that rivals anything that humans have done anywhere at any time. It is that complete. It is that it is that it is that is absolutely transformative. Now, our whole relationship to water, though, has been this extractivist thing. We have inadvertently traded more than we even realize that we have for this infrastructure of 1,400 named dams and several thousand miles of aqueduct and having built a system, including the most fecund and productive agricultural area in the world, the Great Central Valley, and also being able to supply the needs of 40 million people in a place that, well, 2/3 of the people of California live in a place that gets less water than it takes about 20 inches of rain to grow anything without irrigation. 2/3 of the people of California don't live in that, live underneath that threshold. The rest would be the northern coniferous forests. And furthermore, one of the largest metropolitan areas in the world, Los Angeles, is over 100 miles from a viable local freshwater source. I mean, what an incredible real estate scam that city was, and we're paying for it now. Well, we're not paying for it now. We are not paying for it now. What we are doing is we are transforming in a big way. We are transforming in a big way. Believe it or not. There are many good plans on the books right now, and I am very excited and supportive of our leadership in Sacramento towards these ends. I have plenty of criticism for the Newsom administration about fossil fuel extraction, among other things. But the plan now, and we're all going to get on board with this real fast. The plan now is that by 2045, California will stop becoming a carbon source and will actually become a carbon sink. We are going to be negative. We'll be in the threshold of negative emissions for the state. And it is an impressive plan. You can go there now. You can go get online, get the PDF. It's called Getting to Neutral. And it is a exercise in leadership on the climate front that is unparalleled and reads like poetry, quite frankly. In the age of, I mean, we're all thinking, of course, about the age of gigafire as it is happening now. Gigafire being 1 million acres. We had our first one in over 100 years this August, and in fact, now the fires. Here we are, December, and a beautiful 70-degree sunny day. The Dolan fire in the Big Sur Mountains is still smoldering, having not been put out and having burned continuously since August 16th. Meanwhile, Los Angeles is working on getting, in the next 15 years, 100% of their wastewater recycled. And what that will do as this plan comes online, it will free up the energetic resources that now are involved with, among other things, the building of the Delta Tunnel to deliver more water to the Central Valley and to metropolitan Los Angeles. Now, even today, the California Water Board was voting on that issue, building the Delta Tunnel, which is perhaps something you guys know about. I don't want to get too much into specific campaigns tonight because there are a lot of them and very easy to get bogged down. I am here tonight to describe a trajectory of my own work and as I see it with my larger human community now so engaged. I think in order to talk about how my process is applicable on a philosophical level to any kind of revolutionary thought, any sort of real engagement with you that transcends the old political arguments of divisiveness, really, to attach to the very and connect with the very soul of the human that you are, that I am. If only I could be saying this to you in person and look into your eyes as that is the magic of community. I grew up, I went to school at UC Santa Barbara, and I spent most of my time there skipping class and backpacking in the Santa Ynez Mountains, where the Chumash people have lived for thousands and thousands of years and have decorated the place with hundreds and hundreds of art sites, beautiful paintings, gorgeous, mysterious. In fact, a lot of the narrative has been lost to even the vibrant living Chumash culture that continues to exist to this day, despite cultural efforts at erasure, American efforts at genocide. Chumash people are still alive and thriving, or doing better than ever. Doing better, certainly, than they have in the past 300 years, arguably. In any case, I want to talk about their paintings, the rock art of the Chumash, which means so much to me and taught me so much about how to be a painter. So, I get asked all the time, like, who are your favorite influencers or whatever, and I think that they think that I will, mention some sort of white European man or woman, when in fact, although my style tends to be realistically depicting wildlife in a way that is comprehensible to me, I think back always to my experience pondering the Chumash art and the way of their picture making. And what I recognize there is an artist communicating deep truths of how to perceive nature, within a very sophisticated lexicon of symbols. I think of that Chumash artist sort of magically able to see one of my paintings of a hawk or an eagle and it be completely abstract to them. That all of our symbolic communication or artistic communication takes place on a very fundamentally abstract level. But that level of aesthetic appreciation can then be transformative in the manner of the aesthetic arrest, which is the greatest creative capacity of our species. That moment when in arrest we understand, we are in the process of sublimation, where James Joyce put it very well when he said, the eye of the universe perceives the thing of the universe and the two are made one. And that's the power of metaphor. And that's the power of metaphor. So we have to, we have I just described like this beautiful experience. And what that is to me is the experience of being alive, of being here, of being able to witness this beauty outside of my own wants and needs and my human desperation. I wrote this book on water, and I realized that when you're talking about water in California, you're really not talking about water. You're talking about what is worth what. You're talking about worldview. And we trade out so much, thinking that it's our right to do so, when not attending the deeper responsibility that accompanies every single right that we enjoy. I have this recurring dream. I is standing on the banks of a river, Sacramento River, looking east towards the Sierra Nevada mountains, and maybe it was 200 years ago when the whole stream bed is rippling and shining with like nickels, and I realized that at their a Chinook run of salmon coming back. This is, I think, the only slide in my deck here that doesn't have one of my paintings. I just, these people-sized salmon, hundreds of thousands of them, returning in the winter or in the spring. How about that? Because the river would be so swollen that it would be 15-20 miles wide, as is the natural state of the Sacramento River, as the floodwaters from the Sierra Nevada have just coated the entire valley with this extremely rich Pleistocene alluvium, right? Some of the best soil in the world. And of course, that is fed and that's fed by these salmon. I mean, you think of the salmon going up these rivers and heading up. Well, first of all, they would be dodging the dozens and dozens of grizzly bear who of course these would be ample food for. And I also think of how the grizzly till on the stream beds, how perfect that would be for on the banks in the riparian environments, how perfect that would be for flower and plant habitat. And then the fish would, these anadromous fish on their return from the ocean, many years, these adult fish finally bouncing up the beaver terraces being all across the western slope of the Sierra Nevada and all throughout the greater San Francisco Bay Area and the coastal ranges north and south. These terraces, these lodges, the beavers use to that spread out the water table, that increase watershed health, that activate biodiversity, that do all of these brilliant functions. You have to remember that before the gold rush, there was a first California rush, and that was the fur rush from the the first half of the 19th century, which is devastating to the beaver populations of California. But in fact, it was probable that beaver density across the state was so concentrated that it was like 2 or 3 beaver per kilometer was a regular occurrence on any given watercourse from San Diego to Crescent City. I mean, there were that many California beaver and that many beaver killed within 3 or 4 decades. So these fish, these people-sized salmon, hundreds of thousands of them, then depositing their life depositing their bodies, fulfilling their anadromous destiny at the headwaters of their birth, and giving those hundreds of thousands of metric tons of calcium, phosphorus, nitrogen back to the forest body that again comes down in the flood now and is spread out across the beaver lodges to feed the forest body, to regulate water cycles, which in turn, of course, then help with fire cycles. We will talk about fire in a little bit. I like to talk about fire's a big one, isn't it? Gosh, it's so dramatic. I would like to talk about what's happening right now, though, as far as land conservation goes, because we had some ideas in the 20th century, didn't we? We had some ideas that were good. You know, we invented the national park system in the first half of the 20th century. In the last half of the 20th century, we had this moment, right? We had this moment that was sort of defined by the which is called the era of the golden age of environmental legislation. So we've got this was the Endangered Species Act, 1973. This is the Clean Water Act. This is the invention of the EPA. These are all passing with like 95% congressional support. Can you imagine anything doing that today? It's a different time. And there were great ideas then. But now we are seeing, it's funny, you know, I mean, we think about what we know and what we don't know. Remember, I was talking about biological dark matter. There's many areas of ecological science that are just emerging right now. I mean, well, emerging. It was 1968 when E.O. Wilson and Robert MacArthur wrote the theory of island biogeography, which was the first time that we really understood speciation on a geographic level. How do species happen? And this is one of the first real actualizations, literary actualizations, when we finally found the scientific wording, when we finally found the scientific method inside of the theory that applied Darwinian thinking to the ecosystem. And that was 1968. That was 15 years after we understood the chromosomal nature of deoxyribonucleic acid, right? DNA. Like we our own genetic, like the way the information, the genetic, well, the way that life transmits information. These are very new ideas that even applying our Darwinian ideas to ecological theory, just doing that simple plug-in within my lifetime. Almost. I was born in 73. But now we're seeing at the beginning of the 21st century some of the anemic policies then of the early 20th century conservation mandates, right? Which we are still in. Like drawing a circle around a place and calling it a park is okay, but what you're doing is you are condemning that place to a slow death by isolation. What must happen, as in all living bodies, is the quality of the connectivity between habitat spaces is what must be the North Star towards future conservation. And what has happened over the past 30 years is a miracle, an environmental miracle. And I mean miracle, not necessarily a spiritual sense, but of course not a spiritual sense. This is very much humans figuring things out with love and hope. But the land trust movement has exploded. There in 1970 and 1980, there were like 3 or 4 land trusts, and now there are hundreds across California. And it's in this excellent invention of the conservation easement, which is putting land into under the management of a land trust, such that it will be conserved in that state forever. And some of the big ones, like the Mojave Desert Land Trust right now, they are such a good group of people getting out there, buying up these in holdings. And what they'll actually do is, like, this is mostly in the Mojave Desert. So what they'll do is they'll even get out there and rake all of the metal out of the property. Imagine some of these properties out there in the back country of the Mojave Desert have seen like just decades of horrible abuse. So remediating all of that garbage just by rake and by shovel, and then like destroying the roads in there and replanting the native Joshua tree forest throughout that property. And now they've done it 40,000 acres between the Mojave Trails National Monument, the Mojave National Wildlife Preserve, and the Sand to Snow National Monument. All these fantastic land designations beyond the California floristic province, right? Up in the Mojave Desert, a different place altogether. And post-political too. And that is where I'm hoping that we're getting now. And it's terrible because it's taking catastrophe for us to come together. And I believe that despite the hype, despite the unceasing rhetoric, mostly corporate in nature, keeping us divided by whatever definition. We've got northern, we've got southern, we've got urban, we've got rural, and probably the big one right now that's forever on our minds is red and blue, right? Whatever tribe you've got, that is very good for keeping us from the justice we should be demanding as a unified people in California. And I've got some ideas about how to get there. I certainly do. I think that we need to talk about what value is. The Forest of California presumes that the intrinsic value of biodiversity outweighs the capital value of its dismantlement, and that by conserving the resource mechanisms of habitat biogeography, we protect the natural systems of resiliency that human society depends on. So we are making decisions right now, my friends. These next 10 years, this is a window for us. The decisions that we make over the next 10 years will decide the quality of our residency here for the next several centuries. How about that? Instead of saying save the world, let's talk about leaving this, stewarding the miracle, okay? And the miracle then would be this. That although every single one of our natural landscape types is either threatened or endangered, across California's entire portfolio of biodiversity, we have an incredibly low extinction rate. It's actually less than 1%. That means that all the pieces are still on the board. Now, it's very difficult for scientists to say that something's extinct, okay? So there are many, many species on the endangered species list that we haven't heard from in quite a while. And it is very dangerous for a scientist or a scientific community to say, this one's gone. This butterfly is gone. And that notwithstanding, the miracle that we're handed, that is in our hands, that gets me out of bed and gets me to work at my desk every single day, is exactly that. How do we better engage that? How do we keep the pieces on the board? Because the pieces on the board, the biodiversity that we have, keeps the ecological services functioning. And we depend on a lot of ecological services. We certainly do. But so I'm talking about the next 10 years. The next 10 years are going to be rough. The next 10 years are going to be rough. Now, I was very disheartened to see that Time magazine has just put on their cover 2020 declared the worst year ever. I would like to move on past apocalyptic language. I think it's necessary for us to do that. If we are just criticizing this world without imagining the world to come, the world as it could be, California as it could be, we will stay there, and we will be disheartened when in fact 2021 brings another wave, perhaps larger, perhaps much larger than what we experienced in 2020. I'm here to make a prediction tonight, or I'm not here to do that, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to lay down an idea, a prediction. Within the next year to 10 years, we are going to see a fire complex across the western slope of the Sierra Nevada in excess of 2 to 3 million acres in a single fire. We are that primed and ready to go. Our forests are that simplified, that overcrowded, that drought stressed, that diseased, that we are going to see a fire that we have not seen in modern history, and that is going to happen right there. And we got to get ready for it. And what I mean by that is it's not just hiring more firefighters. It's about getting ourselves right with it. 2020 is not the worst year ever. 2020 is training. Being forewarned is being forearmed. We have the opportunity to confront this challenge. Every challenge comes with opportunity. For every point of despair, there is a point of hope. There is so much hope. Hope being necessarily a temporal idea. And what I mean by that it's related to time. If there is time, there is hope. It gets back to what I was saying about designating a species as actually being extinct in that process, because once you do that, there is no hope. Keeping hope alive is very important. It's very important in our work going forward, and it makes policy happen. When we actually decide that 2045 is going to be a thing, we can plan for it. In this era of dissonance and alternative facts, too much social media, and you'll think that we're not even going to survive till next Tuesday. But if that's the case, how do we begin the conversation of what does our society look like 100 years from now? Because we need to have that conversation. But remember, we're the 5th largest economy in the world, $3 trillion. We can do what we want to do. We can put all of those billions, instead of cleaning up the fire, we put those billions before the fire. We put those billions into making restorationism a trade skill and unionize a force of labors. We put people to work. People want to work. Here's a couple of images. I mean, look at this. Look at this. Almost half of the total land area that has burned in the past 100 years, or the past 88 years, has burned in the last 100 days. That's the situation that we're in as far as the conflagration of our catastrophe. And yet I say to you that this is not only a challenge, it's a challenge that is wrapped up in opportunity. It is a challenge to us, to me as an artist. How about that? An artist who I want to transform and reset with this fire. And we have that opportunity. Fire in California exists as fire does not exist anywhere else on the planet. All of these arboreal habitats have strategies of dealing with it. There's intelligent subjectivities in the garden, if you will. There is a plan to encounter fire as an energetic release to maintain health, to maintain biodiversity. If we understand the nature of that clock, of that adaptive cycle, as I have described here graphically, we might be able to transcend our own natural human fear of this destructive, of seeing fire as only a destructive force. And we might engage that terrible trifecta of commodification of the forest by the timber industry, of bad science from 20th century policy, and lastly, I think from colonialized violence against the indigenous people of California. You have to talk about the justice that is required to restore that time of reckoning in our hearts as Euro-American settlers in this place towards the very living, still remembering community of Native Californians. So we've seen movements spark in the past. We've seen Rachel Carson's Silent Spring came out in 1961 when we were thinking that the bald eagle was going to become extinct. I remember backpacking in Big Sur in the 80s and thinking that nature was something that happened, right? There were no condors, there were no whales, there were no otters, there were no elk, there were no kites, it keeps going on and on. All of those species I just mentioned are now rebounding, population increasing. This is people, this is you and I, this is Californians engaging with love and hope, this new idea of tending the miracle and stewardship towards that. Squandering it, well, of course, what I mean is our biggest challenges are yet to come and our most revolutionary ideas. You know, we carry into our future as many responsibilities as we do rights. This is our charge. We have the right to extract, but we have the responsibility to replenish. We have the right to develop, but we have the responsibility to restore. We have the right to inhabit, but we have the responsibility to set aside. Stewardship is the active management of leaving the more than human world to its own functioning devices. Re-engaging those devices, resetting the system is something that will require a fundamental reassessment of so many mechanisms we take for granted. But we've got a plan to do it on local levels, on regional levels, on national levels, and on international levels. And in the era of post-argument, which I think is coming, I'm sort of tired of arguing about this stuff because our houses are quite literally on fire. I see that, you know, as my second book said, that it said State of Water, Understanding California's Most Precious Resource. What California's most precious resource actually is not water at all, but ultimately then the ability to trust each other enough with a story that examines the nature of truth, examines the nature of compassion, and engages justice and hope. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it here as I've been talking with you now for about an hour, and I'm out of slides. I really appreciate all your time. Now I understand that Rick's gonna come back, and maybe there is some questions. I don't know. I've sort of been like in a void bubble here. There he is. Hey, Rick. You got to unmute yourself there.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I do believe that there's questions, and that we're going to take two questions. Let's see. The first question deals with fire, Obi.
Oh, okay.
And the question is, uh, actually, sorry, I'm getting a number of questions here. So the first question is about your book, The Forests of California. How long did it take to write it? What were the difficulties for you in writing the book, and what were the joys in writing the book?
All right. Yeah. What a great question. Thank you. Yeah. If I don't get to your questions tonight, or if we don't have time to go through all of them, you can just go ahead and email me directly at coyoteandthunder@gmail.com. That's my email address. And there's no guarantee that I'm going to get back to you in any timely manner, but I look forward to hearing from you anyway. Yeah, I've got these two books done. Oh, and then I had this one, right? So I've got I've got three more on the way too. I got the coasts of California, the deserts of California, and then the state of fire, how, where, and why California burns will bookend the state of water book. So that's going to be the big Game of Thrones epic multi-title gift set that will be available in a few years. These books take me about a year or two to make. It's such a pleasure. It's such an honor. It's such a singular thrill to be teamed up with this fantastic publishing house out of Berkeley called Heyday Books. And, they've been publishing books about California nature, politics, social justice, and all of that stuff for about 50 years. And I am to have the opportunity to write a book called The Forests of California, which is very much a reference to Muir's book, The Mountains of California, written, 120 years ago now, where sort of it's spiritual step baby, if you will, where I'm putting the nature first, right? That would be the big joy in it. Now, it's not necessarily a peer-reviewed book. Again, we're not. I don't make science textbooks. I don't leave you alone with the facts. But there were plenty of biologists who went through the text before it was published, and and some of the criticism that I got back in the earlier drafts was that it was like, I don't recognize. Like I went too far out there. Like I almost sort of threw all the other maps away, and I just invented my forest of California, and it was unrecognizable to so many California naturalists. And I did not, and so I had to rewrite large chunks of the book because I really wanted everyone who studies the forests of California to be able to find their forests of California inside of this really big tome. Inside of this sprawling work. So I rewrite, the content making phase followed by the editing phase of the book is always as creative, as engaging, as potentially as challenging as anything.
Great. And the second question deals with California's natural health, and it is, what natural cycles do you believe are the most important to bringing back into balance the long-term natural health of California's biospheres?
Natural cycles, right? So
which natural cycles are most important to focus on?
Right. Well, it depends on what we're actually talking about here, right? So there is, I think of connective corridor ecology as it exists within our riparian habitats across the state being disastrously compromised and impaired with all of this old thinking about water storage, water usage, and water conveyance. So we've got this aging infrastructure. Of water conveyance in the state and storage, right? The dam system, which most of these dams are pushing 70, 80, 90 years old at the end of their useful lives, filling with sediment, especially across coastal California, and what to do with those. Removing dams is a massive industry that will ultimately feed the very precious resource that is biodiversity. Whatever we can do to maintain the biodiversity. Now you can't talk about water cycles without talking about fire cycles. Fire cycles are very important to this day. It turns out that biodiversity equals, or pyrodiversity equals biodiversity. We need a whole mix of fire regimes, reestablishing native regimes, which includes the removal of invasive species and letting fire have its day. Before Euro-American settlement, it was estimated that anthropogenic fire regimes across California were in the range of 4 to 5, even 6 million acres a year. But most of those fires were averaged about 500 acres with an intense burn zone of 10 to 50 acres, as opposed to the massive fires we have now, like the gigafire that is the August complex in the Mendocino National Forest, or where you have hundreds of thousands of acres and tens of thousands of intense burn zones, which has completely deformed the mosaic of arboreal habitats across the state. So getting those two things right, again, getting right with fire as a tool for natural health, and getting right with the water regime through other methods instead of just impoundment, to engaging the natural hydrology of California, which is incredibly fecund and powerful. There's a lot of water here. Lack of water is not the problem.
Okay, well, thank you, Obi. Thank you for your terrific presentation. We appreciate.
Did you have fun, Rick?
I just love diving into your book. It's a principal reference work for me.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all of your great work in Atherton. And if I can ever be of any assistance to you or your community, please won't you let me know?
Absolutely. I want to let everyone on the call know that if Obi didn't get to your questions, we are going to deliver them to him. So he'll be getting back to you. Just give him your email address so he knows how to get a hold of you. And secondly, if you want to get the Forests of California, it's very easily accessible through the library at smcl.org. The Forests of California is at smcl.org. Obi, thank you for spending the evening and taking us on your journey.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you, San Mateo County Libraries, and thank you, community. See you all soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay.